people using cryptocurrency as a way to do the crime. The centralized server to train the AI, which have the potential to release customer information. So if your information was released, you can damage your life.
Welcome. Would you like to give us a little bit of an intro to yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. It's my great pleasure to become here. I'm now a professor at New York University, Stern School of Business. Previously, I did my PhD in Carnegie Mellon University in machine learning. At that time, machine learning is not as hot as nowadays. And then I did a postdoc at UC Berkeley with the very famous professor Michael Jordan in AI. He's not the Michael Jordan in basketball, but he also shared a similar social status, in AI as the Michael Jordan in basketball. And after that, after I finished my postdoc training at UC Berkeley, I went to NYU Stern School of Business because I really liked the intersection between machine learning and also the business world. So I came here for like about 10 years. And during that, I also spent like 2 years serving as a principal research scientist at Amazon Digital Advertising, leading a science team to help with the forecasting and delivery for Amazon ads, especially for video ads.
So what are you currently working on?
Yeah, during the past 10 years, actually, I shifted several, kind of directions of my research. Initially, I'm working a lot on high-dimensional statistics and large-scale stochastic optimization. So this is my PhD thesis. But after I joined business school, I want to say doing more business-related topics. So I work on especially the bandit or online learning with application to e-commerce, especially with respect to pricing and recommendation and also digital advertising. And I also look at different, ethical AI aspects, like, for example, differential privacy or fairness. And since I get tenure on 2020, I realized another interesting direction. I'm just exploring this. It's very new to me, is on blockchain. So I'm looking at, for example, the mechanism design, the blockchain system, and also looking at the decentralized finance. This is pretty much my research trajectory. But of course, recently I got a very interesting AI or large language model. I'm still looking for, what directions I can pursue in this very new field.
What excites you about decentralized finance?
Yeah, I think decentralized finance adopts a very different mechanism as traditional finance. For example, the traditional finance, we use limit order book structure, where the seller and the buyer put their orders on a limit order book structure, and the central exchange, for example, Nasdaq, keeps that limit order book structure. But keeping a limit order book structure on the blockchain is very, very difficult because it's very complicated structure. So in the 2020, with the rising of Uniswap, people utilizing some very, very simple structure called automated market making. So basically, they invented something called the liquidity pool, and they put two different tokens, for example, Ethereum and the stable coin to the liquidity pool, and you do the transaction on that. You just need to keep, the product of the quantity of the two tokens to be a constant. It's very, very simple. So it just give you a new kind of way of doing the transaction, and it's very different from the traditional structure. It's very easy to implement, very easy to keep on the, maintained on the distributed ledger as some, Ethereum or some other, blockchain structure. So it's given a new kind of a way of transaction. And of course, it's any decentralized system is have the kind of the advantage of transparency, seamless transaction. You can transact 24/7. So it keeps all these kind of advantages.
So this was Uniswap.
Yeah.
Okay. And what has been the central thesis behind your contributions to decentralized finance?
Oh yeah, of course, as I mentioned, it's a very, very new area. There are several directions I'm looking at. The initial research I'm looking at is doing some, traditional delta hedging, but how it looks like in the, a decentralized space will be totally different because of the, the structure of the Uniswap. So basically, we are seeing that if you are holding some tokens in the liquidity pool, but you want to hedge against the directional risk, and how you construct a portfolio of options to hedge against the directional risk. And then I also like trying to
What is directional risk?
Oh yeah, it's a very good question. So it's basically saying that okay, I'm a liquidity provider. I create this liquidity pool. I put my tokens there, because if some people make transactions, for example, they put in more Ethereum and they exchange for like more stable coins, I will get some fees, and I make my earning based on this fee. So I'm thinking of I'm the market maker or the liquidity provider, but I'm exposed to certain risk, which means that my token stored in this liquidity pool, if the token price just decreases, as I'm suffered a loss. So basically, that is a direction risk, and we want to hedge against this. We just want to say, okay, let's hedge against any direction risk, but I just earning the very stable transaction fee. So this is kind of the idea of delta hedging in the, like the traditional finance. But we just explore how we apply this into the, the crypto world.
Sure. And what's the most difficult part about applying this in the crypto world?
Oh yeah, I think in the decentralized finance, still I think there's still a lot of improvement in the infrastructure. So for example, the liquidity must be deep enough. As compared to the centralized exchange, at least a few years ago, the liquidity on the decentralized exchange is not as good as centralized exchange. But I see the condition improves much better during this year. And also, like decentralized exchange, some people worry about, their vulnerability. For example, there can be some very bad cases, some adversary attack on the, decentralized exchange, so they may suffer the loss. And we want to, that there's certain risk of that. But I think with the infrastructure become more and more robust, people are kind of more willing to make the transactions on DeFi.
So how are people going about making the infrastructure more robust right now?
Yes, I think people are trying all the different ways. I give you some examples. For example, initially the crypto was defined for the transparency, which means, for example, I send you the Bitcoin, and the both of our addresses will be exposed on the internet. Everybody can see it. But this is, prevents some, institutional players enter the field because they feel like they are not protected. So there are some other ways of like zero knowledge proof. Rising of this technology can help protect the privacy, and this is one kind of big achievement. Or like people are working very hard on this direction to provide the privacy. And you also know that, for example, the Bitcoin transaction is very kind of takes a lot of time. So we have all kind of, especially since last year, many new infrastructure on Bitcoin are established. For example, Bitcoin Layer 2, which can greatly improve the transaction for the Bitcoin.
So you mentioned you were working a little bit on differential privacy, right?
Yes, exactly.
So my understanding of differential privacy was that the entirety of it is about protecting statistics when you want to be able to get side statistics.
Exactly.
Right? What sort of statistics are you protecting in the case of decentralized finance?
So I think, so of course, when we talk about, I don't think differential privacy has been applied to this, I don't see any literature on the differential privacy applied to decentralized finance, but you give a very good, kind of a direction. So what I'm worked on for decentralized differential privacy is more in the online learning or online bandits with application to pricing or.
What are online bandits?
Oh yes, it's a good question. So online bandits, which means that, I don't know if you're going to, at least the bandit name came from casino, where you have different arms, and you put the arm, and you for example, you are facing a few arms, and each arm, when you pull it, it gives you some random reward. So for example, this arm can give you the reward with the mean 5 with standard deviation 2, and next arm can give you the mean, say 4, but with standard deviation 1. So actually, you don't know this kind of parameters behind each arm. So your goal is to kind of experiment and you are trying to learn the underlying parameter for each arm. And eventually your goal is that if you play it for a long time, you want to identify, say, the best arm and pull it and trying to maximize your revenue. So it's a kind of a framework for, kind of many online decision problem. For example, pricing, let's say you go into the online shopping market, and they will, based on your, say your kind of a transaction, so we'll say, okay, I'll probably give you a price or a different coupon, for your purchase or something.
I guess this assumes that there is one best arm and it's not changing over time.
Yeah, so you already were assuming, kind of environment does not change based on your action. But of course, we can also model more complicated scenario where environments changes because of your own action, and this in machine learning we call it reinforcement learning. Yeah, so I think both of regimes are very interesting, and there's a lot of research going on for both regimes.
So in the online bandit problem, what statistics are you trying to keep secret, I guess?
Oh yeah, so if for example, if we consider so-called linear bandits, where for example is reward is linear function in terms of your of your feature, that means some characteristic for the customer who put in the arm, and we are trying to protect, for example, the customer feature information, because that's very important. For example, you don't want people say, let's just assuming for example, your age, your demographics, your tradition, historical transactions, maybe even your credit information. They're all you want to protect.
So in this case, you have a customer, and the customer is the bandit. Or the customer is the reward system.
The customer is, you can view you have so basically it's a model if a customer comes in, and we give certain kind of so the customer together with the action is you can view as a bandit. So for example, I give you a very concrete scenario. If a customer comes in, I give you a price. Okay, the price. The pricing essentially is kind of a bandit. It's kind of my decision. It's kind
Sure.
of the decision. And as the customer see the price, and the customer make the decision of whether he or she wants to purchase or not, and the revenue from the purchase is the reward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your bandit is essentially a multi-party composition. It's in this case, it's not one actual agent acting.
Yeah.
It is actually a system itself.
Exactly.
Okay. So then you're really studying not just the interaction, not just the AI systems, but the systems that the AI systems are trained on in these cases,
Mm-hmm.
and how to protect us as consumers.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, we want to protect, the customer features like demographics, but we also want to protect, the customer decision. So, for example, if the customer want to purchase certain drug, and you want to protect, you don't want any kind of purchasing information was released, because it can be dangerous, can be used by other malicious parties.
Have you ever applied this to real world systems?
Yeah, I think I do a lot of research on this. When I was a principal research scientist at Amazon, I talked to the internal teams on how to deploy kind of deploying this. I noticed that they have in the S team, they also have some people working on differential privacy. I don't know whether exactly implement the algorithm, but I think definitely differential privacy was getting a lot of interest and attentions from all the tech companies, and because indeed the privacy is more and more important nowadays, and also we are under many regulation kind of monitors.
Why would we as customers need this?
It's a very good question. So for example, if your information was released, it can damage many of you can damage your life. For example, you will see you will receive all kind of spam calls, trying to selling something, and the people may even utilize your information to do something very harmful to the society. So I think keeping, and also we as a user, we want to protect our privacy. So we don't want we want to, for example, some information only shared between our friends or our we don't want this information to be open to the public. I think it's it's something very natural, so that's it's indeed critical to all the customers and all the people.
In this case, though, the information is still the customer's information is still ending up on the internet, but it's not ending up with the AI system getting trained on that customer's information, but it could be released to somebody else's, right?
Yes, especially, for example, even my information is stored on, say on some, selling platform. but some adversary can trying to utilize some kind of attacks to gain some information about like, my characteristic, or not my characteristic, but a group of people. And then they can trying to, give some target advertisement or, some kind of thing to this specialized group of people. So that's, like that. So differential privacy is more like even the data was securely stored in the database of like, say, a selling platform, but still, the adversary can inject, kind of fake orders or some other tools to kind of seek information from that.
Or what's the work that you've done that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think recently, there are two parts. In terms of research, as I mentioned, I have doing quite a bit of, differential privacy and fairness in terms of, AI. I think I'm very proud of, especially, with the rising, although I'm mostly applying for like e-commerce, as I mentioned, about pricing, about recommendation, digital advertising. I feel it's also, some ideas can be applied to, for example, large language models and, so this is a part I'm pretty proud of. And the second part I'm very proud of is not about research, it's about my education. So for example, I'm trying to bring the modern technology to the business school students. Recently I wrote a book. I don't know if I can.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a book I just, co-edited. It's called Beyond AI. We talk about ChatGPT, Web3, and also the business landscape of tomorrow. It's different, from any tech book. It's more like towards, like the audience should be, MBA students or some non-expert. They have not gained some training in AI, but what they really want to understand is that what, AI or like Web3 can be applied to their own business. For example, if they are lawyers, they are, financial institutions, they are, like kind of medians, they are like, so for example, movie company, and how the AI can help them. So this part I'm very proud of. And actually after this book, I'm also have a new book, which is called Web3, the Blockchain New Economy, and Sovereignty of the Internet. The book is published by the Cambridge Press. The Cambridge Press, I think it's a very prestigious press. And that book is very, kind of educational purpose towards the MBA students. Hopefully you will see this book by the middle of this year.
So my mother runs a law firm, a personal injury law firm. How can Web3 help her?
Oh yeah, I think potentially it's a very good question. I think one thing that, for example, you can potentially like one direction is, because Web3 is kind of decentralized, you do not need to submit your data into the centralized server to train the AI, which have the potential to release customer information. So the Web3 or the crypto technology can help them better protect the customer, kind of a data when they want to use, large language models. So this is the direction I'm thinking about. How do you combine like, some ideas from blockchain infrastructure towards, AI? Because, for example, in the law firm, the biggest concern is that, for example, if I'm using ChatGPT or this AI kind of tools, I need to submit, my talking to them, I might intentionally or unintentionally release the customer information. And they might use such a data, to fine tune or to train their model. But the trained model has already consumed the private customer information. That can be a very bad thing. So we definitely need, new mechanism to kind of interact with this AI bots, but also kind of protect the customer information. And potentially, I think the ideas of, from blockchain can be, some ideas could be very useful in this direction.
How do you keep a model for, how do you both train a model on somebody's information and keep the model from spitting that information out again?
Yes, it's a very good question. I think it's a very new area. There are definitely no good answer to that, and we don't know whether how much information was utilized. One thing that, for example, you can trying to condense your new information into prompt rather than using in the training or fine tuning. You can use something like in context learning, which trying to condense your information in the prompt and just feed large language model by the prompt. Hopefully in the future there are some other kind of ways to feeding the large language model some, source of information for the fine tuning, but make sure like this kind of information will not be released to the third party. I think it's just a very new research direction.
What do you think has the most hope of solving it? Which direction do you think? Like, you're using RAG instead of training, or some sort of federated learning and separating models out into separate pieces?
Yeah, I think federated learning is definitely a direction where I keep part of the training on my cell phone, and the base model is on the cloud. So that is definitely a direction, and we see like both the power of large models, like for example, like GPT, but we also see like power of small models, like like people trying to use 1 billion or 7 billion kind of parameters, but also can achieve very impressive results. So it's kind of a coordination between the local device and the cloud. I think this is definitely like one kind of a direction, but still the transmission of this information can be also dangerous. So you need some, again, the privacy protection techniques to prevent the information leakage, kind of the interaction between the local device and the cloud.
So my understanding of Web3 is that transaction speed is one of the major problems. It's, you can have transactions on the order of hours for like simple things, just sending somebody money. And then storing, like, yes, it's technically, like, all of these systems are technically distributed databases, but the cost of storage is exorbitant. I saw like quotes a few years ago that like a kilobyte would cost thousands of dollars. Now, with large language models, these are hundreds of billions of parameters. These are like multi-gigabyte, multi-terabyte models. How could you possibly store them or utilize them in Web3?
It's a very good question. So actually, since the Bitcoin was indeed, as you mentioned, the transaction time is very long. Storage is very expensive. But over the past 10 years, like computer scientists have devoted a huge amount of effort trying to improving this, and many new technology was invented. So for example, like we are doing a lot of things called layer 2, which means that you do not need to verify your transaction for every new transaction. We can do some batch on the offline, and trying to migrate this information to the online. And there's something called Oracle, which means like trying to online offline interactions, trying to like for example, the Oracle can read like the stock price or Bitcoin price, like in the offline world on the internet, and trying to put this information online. So I feel like in the future there must be some even better way of online offline kind of interaction. So where the major computation is like done on the offline case, but some key information, for example, your in context learning, your prompt or your answers will be keeping the online. So it's the model, I think, probably still need to be offline, held by OpenAI or these big companies, but they are like very key information, private information will keep online, and there must be some very kind of secure and trustworthy protocol for the interactions between online and offline. I think this will be like the possible solution for this.
Kind of finding like the most important 5 neurons, keep those 5 neurons online at once.
Yeah.
Or like, maybe holographically some like, hundreds of thousands of neurons, but that's a small percentage of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what worries you most about Web3 going forwards?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you see like, the Bitcoin ETF was approved, like it's from, like a small community, the Web3 become, like more and more noticeable by the public. But there's a few things I'm, worried about. The first is, like the, kind of the vulnerability of the system. Like you will see, like no matter what kind of, layer 2 or bridge, all these kind of inventions in the Web3, because it's, carries the cryptocurrency, and it's easily being attacked by the, by the adversary attackers. So that's, I think, the one thing that people are a little bit reluctant to really adopt this is because, like it's kind of vulnerability. So I think the improvement of infrastructure in terms of robustness is the first important thing. And second important thing is privacy. As I mentioned, because if I send you the coins, all our addresses will be publicly available. So you can see you can really not use it, for example, in a corporation using, let's say, Bitcoin as a payment or as a, salary payment, because then people kind of know each other's salary if I know the addresses. So the privacy is the second concern. And of course, we also have the concern of, regulation, trying to avoid the people using cryptocurrency as a way to do the crime. I think, this is another very important thing. We need the right, proper regulations to monitor people's activity, make sure we have the proper KYC, trying to make it, all the tradings on the crypto networks are legal. And the final thing I want to mention is that still, if you're using, cryptocurrency, for example, even installing a MetaMask, it's still make people feel very difficult. Some people feel it's still like using, you need certain kind of technology or certain kind of, barriers to enter the crypto world as compared to using a credit card. So I think eventually we definitely need, more seamless, user-friendly kind of tools to help people, bring the public to this world.
Do we necessarily want more people using Web3?
I think it's a good question. It's and any new technology is a double-sided sword. As I mentioned, Web3 has this advantage. For example, you own your data. It's decentralized, but it also poses, vulnerability, the privacy, kind of regulation, many issues. So it's a new technology, double-sided sword. I think with the infrastructure become more and more matured and more advanced, trying to avoid this kind of weaknesses, I think definitely it will bring, kind of benefit to the public in terms of especially in terms of your privacy, your own data privacy, so on and so forth.
I think there are definitely cases where I see like Web3 being useful right now. The question that I have is more just like, is it necessarily something that should be used by the general public, or should we find that group of people that really absolutely needs Web3? And my understanding is that it was originally designed for people who had to skirt laws in countries with oppressive dictatorships and places where you wanted those guarantees about trustlessness.
Yes, but still, for example, we are all using social media nowadays. In the world of Web3, you think you should have the right to own your data. So, we're using the social media, but actually we're contributing all our data to the platform. And essentially the platform can do anything they want. So of course, we have the regulation and the laws to prevent them to doing so. But usually the laws and the regulations take longer time. So it's more, so people say, okay, with the new technology, we can probably try to protect our data in a better way. And if they want to use our data, and we should get incentivized, and we should get some reward if my data was utilized for some, advertising or some other kind of tasks. So I think it's in some sense, decentralized, providing a more fair kind of environment between, the individual users versus a very giant platform.
How do you guarantee though that the data, or that you get paid for people using the data? Because once somebody has paid for your data once, isn't your data out there on the in public forever?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that's the reason why we think we are not directly giving out the data. The data was stored in some secured place on a decentralized way. And if they want to query the data, they may just query some summary statistics. So
this is the differential privacy.
Exactly. So the privacy world and the blockchain, that just inherently very closely connected.
So my other understanding of differential privacy is that a lot of the results from the last few years have actually been negative results, showing that we're actually quite limited in what we can keep differentially private. So I guess, are there useful statistics that you found that people care about that they can keep private?
Very good question. As far as I know about, all the giants, like Meta, it's Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, they all have the teams, for example, especially in digital advertising, they have, kind of people do very hard research on differential privacy and deploy the algorithm into like their real system. So for sure, this will be helpful. But I also acknowledge, differential privacy is only a small part of privacy. There's many other kind of privacy where the differential privacy cannot be, cannot help too much. For example, if, as I mentioned, if some people maliciously jailbreak your database and collect your data, or like the transmission channel is not secure, some people just get data directly from the transmission channel. And in this places, differential privacy is not the right tool to moderate, but still likely we have many other new tools. For example, something called the local privacy, which means that whenever you need to send some data, you need to perturb the data before even you sending it. You're not trusting the channel for transmitting the data. There are some other, ways of like a multi-party computation, and also, tools. All these kind of tools can provide certain kind of privacy. So with, I think, pretty much, with the advancement, of the crypto or the blockchain, the cryptography has, boomed again. Like many new technology in cryptography was actually inspired by the new development in the world of blockchain.
What do you see as the biggest threats to the adoption of Web3?
The biggest threats, I think still, as this is, for example, the first of all is the KYC, because, it's kind of you don't want people using the technology for bad things, like, money laundering or, like kind of illegal transactions, so on and so forth. So that's, I think, one of the biggest threat. And the second threat is, as I mentioned, it's more like you kind of, that kind of the technology threat, where it means that if your smart contract is not secured, or your layer 2 or your bridge is not secured, your money was stolen from that bridge. And that is very, kind of a devastating case. So I think all these things are kind of the threats, because essentially the blockchain was invented as a distributed ledger. And once we talk about ledger, you really need this to be secured. So yeah, I think that's the, kind of the fundamental threats, like for blockchain. But there's many other threats, but yeah.
Have you found Bitcoin miners cheating?
I think it's really hard for Bitcoin miners to cheat. But saying that, I think the more important question is that how to give them the right incentive for them, to not collude with, like kind of users. There's not cheating, but sometimes, like, for example, the MEV, where you can give the money to Bitcoin miners, or like the miners, they can put you, in a more advantaged position in terms of transaction. And that can lead to, kind of front-end attack or some other attacks. So that's give you certain kind of advantage in terms of trading. So whether it's fair, it's probably not that fair. So we think that there are many mechanisms we can design to prevent such a case.
I'd love to talk to you a little bit about your process as, writing a book and being a professor. How do you evaluate, like, what new areas, what new directions to work on?
Yes, I think, I'm really, like kind of intrigued by real world problems. My trajectory is very different, from many business school professors. Most of business school professors, for example, finance professor, they are trained in finance field and they take a position in the finance. I have when I entered the business school, I know very little about it. I came from, a world of machine learning and computer science. I'm almost the first one or two batch of PhD students from machine learning department from Carnegie Mellon. At that time, machine learning is a very new word. When I entered department, I'm, kind of a little bit suspicious, of course, CMU is famous for its computer science, but how about machine learning and what the machine learning really does? But luckily, the machine learning becomes hot, and I'm very lucky to get a ticket, to in the business school. But the first time I entered business school, I know very little about the environment, about the culture there. But I think I like it because it's, always interact with MBA students, EMBA students, and the people who are on the first frontier of the business. So when I was a PhD, as I mentioned, I do a lot of high-dimensional statistics, stochastic optimization. They are most theoretical. But as soon as I jump into the business school, I was really intrigued by all kinds of real-world problems. So I spent about, prior to my tenure, I work a lot on the pricing, recommendation, in particular assortment optimization, which means given a lot of substitutable products, how do you display to the customer? And the customer will pick one to maximize certain kind of criteria. And also digital advertising, as I mentioned in my time at Amazon. And then, was, 2020 in the summer, I noticed the Uniswap. You cannot imagine at that time, Uniswap just from nowhere, and suddenly the transactions, the number of, the dollars on the transaction becomes, a few $1 million and growing to tens of $1 million. So I was really intrigued by, kind of this new market. And I talked to my MBA students. They also been very fascinated. They say, okay, it's something new called Web3, and do you know about this? Initially I feel, no, I'm so sorry, I don't know about this. So I say this is the biggest advantage of being a professor, that they pay you the time to learn about new things, and then you can, organize the new things, trying to invent new things, and then teach your students. So, that's how I entered the world of, Web3, and also, now of course, that's in the pandemic mix. So the people feel like they're making the transactions becomes very difficult because the banks are all closed, and they suddenly realize, there's something called cryptocurrency, and people can do the transactions online, very easily. So this is just, give me, I'm entered this new field of, the blockchain and Web3. And now, with the large language models, I'm thinking how to combine, the AI with crypto or AI with finance. I'm always being intrigued by the kind of the new business, inspired by this new technology. And this just gave me the new ideas of research and the new directions.
What inspired you to write your book?
Oh, yeah. So I think I really love my students. I think they are kind of very cool business people with all the business ambitions. Some of them may not have the right, technology, or they're even afraid of technology because they're not trained in computer science or your mathematics, this kind of field. So I think the biggest inspiration of my writing books is really want to bring this technology to people in all different fields, bring the Web3, ChatGPT, AI, large language models to people from, all different fields, no matter they're doing finance, doing marketing. So I firmly believe this technology can benefit the people even working in the very traditional field. It's not only benefit people working, in the modern field like AI or, So I really feel that, this kind of modern technology could benefit every field. So that's motivates me to write, kind of introductory books, trying to introduce this concept to them, and trying to hopefully motivate to think about, what are the applications of this technology in their business landscape.
Well, thank you very much for.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's my great pleasure to do this interview. I really appreciate it.